Liz Truss goes down in history as the UK's shortest-serving prime minister. While she said she's a fighter, not a quitter, in the end, the pressure was just too much. Now many are speculating on the fallout. I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is Liz Truss. Well, she was only prime minister for 6 weeks before being ousted by her party and the public. And while she wasn't the first to make an early exit, she is the shortest-serving prime minister in British history.
Given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
It's left many questioning the state of her party and of the UK itself. With a flagging economy, a looming energy crisis, and the consequences of Brexit taking hold, now is not the best time to plunge the country into a political crisis as well. But here we are. Let's take a look now at what got the UK and Liz Truss to this point.
When Liz Truss was elected as the leader of the Tories, she promised to grow the economy, tackle a looming energy crisis, and lead the party to victory in 2024. But just 6 weeks after moving into number 10, the British Prime Minister was ousted. It all began when she submitted a so-called mini-budget, which borrowed money to give tax cuts to the rich. It enraged the public, and while she was forced to sack her Chancellor of the Exchequer, calls mounted for her own resignation.
I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone. And her supposed best friend, the former Chancellor, he's gone as well. They're all gone. So why is she still here?
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
While she may have thought that in the moment, others in her government weren't so steadfast. On Wednesday, Home Secretary Suella Braverman was forced to step down after emailing a government document from her personal account. And she used her resignation letter to take a political swipe at Truss's leadership. She wrote, "Not only have we broken key pledges that were promised to our voters, but I had serious concerns about this government's commitments, such as reducing overall migration numbers and stopping illegal immigration." A mutiny within Truss's own party soon followed. Several Tory MPs demanded a vote of no confidence against Truss, saying she's lost the authority to lead the country.
We don't need a disruptor in number 10. We need a uniter. I just think it is just a situation that is it can only be remedied. I think with a new prime minister.
Truss wasn't just unpopular with her party, but also with the public. A recent YouGov poll put her approval rating at a remarkably low 10%. Her political woes were compounded by record-high inflation, the possibility of rolling power outages during the winter, and the financial effects of Brexit.
We've got to get rid of her, haven't we? She's got to go. I mean, it's just such a nightmare. Everything that she promised, her promise, everything she said has been a complete U-turn at best, or a lie at worst, and she stood for being honest.
For some, it was just a matter of time before Liz Truss made her exit from number 10, with claims that she may be in office, but she never truly held power.
Well, joining me now to talk more about Liz Truss's exit and what might be waiting in the wings are from Brussels, Peter Wilding, the former advisor to Prime Minister David Cameron and author of What Next? Britain's Future in Europe. From Warsaw, we have former Labour Member of Parliament for Wimbledon, Roger Casale, and in London is Nigel Nelson, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People. Thanks all so much for joining us. All right, let's just establish where everyone stands here. And Peter, did Liz Truss just do the right thing?
Yes, but she was forced to do it. And I think the whole story about Liz Truss is that she's a victim of having no principles and a receptacle of other people's ideology. The Tory party has gone through 4 different iterations of action that comprise it over the last 12 years. But it has been dominated for 30 years by ERG, European Research, I would call right-wing headbangers, who finally, 6 weeks ago now, got their hands on the levers of power. They had their prime minister in place, which they hadn't had before, with Cameron and May and John. They blew it. She was entirely ready to do whatever they wanted. John Redwood and other people like that have had their plans to create a Singapore-on-Thames type of economy for 30 years now, and it has blown up in their faces. Her defenestration is inevitable.
Okay. Roger Casale, is that true?
Well, she did the logical thing. She wanted to be prime minister and to continue as prime minister, but she had no program, she had no policies, and there was therefore no purpose to her government anymore. There was no point in having her as prime minister, no point in continuing, and therefore she's done the right thing to step down.
Okay. Let me get Nigel's opinion quickly on that one. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, certainly the right thing. The alternative to stepping down now was to be dragged out of number 10 kicking and screaming. So it was either a resignation or a humiliating outing.
Okay. Then let me ask you, Nigel, I'll stick with you. Let's talk about the Conservative Party. Can they, or better said, should they, push through for another 2 years until the next election, or just call an early election if they are in and have been in this much disarray?
Well, it depends whose interests you're thinking about. If it's the interests of the nation and certainly the Labour Party, it would be to call a general election immediately. It seems to be absurd that we're now bringing in yet another prime minister without people having their say. However, from the Conservative Party's point of view, a general election would be a disaster. If one was held tomorrow, and judging by the polls at the moment, they would be left with, from where they started, 365 MPs down to just 48 seats left. And that would mean they would be no longer even the official opposition. And the Scottish Nationalist Party would take over that slot. So from the Conservative point of view, the last thing they want to do is hold an election, and they will do everything they possibly can to avoid one.
Mm-hmm. Peter, let me check in with you on that. I mean, it might be better for the public, as Nigel was kind of explaining, but not better for the party. So will they hold on for their political life for the next couple years?
Absolutely.
Who wins then? Who wins?
Well, it's politics. Let's be honest about it. When economic crisis hit, and they have done on many occasions in the history, we had the exchange rate crisis in 1992 and IMF crisis in 1976. Governments which had a very thin majority at that time, but they lasted. Callaghan for another 3 years, John Major for another 5 years. So I don't expect the Conservative Party to hara-kiri any soon. What they'll do is seek to create a duumvirate, Sunak, Mordaunt, to leading contenders in the leadership election of these Truss, and try and convey steadiness. That is all they've got left. And frankly, it's all the Conservative backbench MPs have got left too. Not too long ago, in the rout of 1997, they saw over 200 of their colleagues demolished and thrown out of power. They're not going to do that. So the country will not benefit, but the party will stick on to the bitter end. That's sure.
That's a great outlook. Roger, I mean, will the public stand for that? Do they have to?
Last month we were saying God save the king, and today we have to say God save the people. I'm glad that you mentioned the public, who are facing a cost of living crisis and higher mortgage rates as a direct result of the short time that Liz Truss has been in power. She hadn't been in power for very long, but she's done a lot of damage. And let's remember what the Conservative Party have lost today. They've not just lost a prime minister, they've lost their reputation for economic competence. They've lost credibility in the eyes of the international community and in the eyes of the market. And they've certainly lost the confidence, not just of the public, but I think of their own members. I spoke to a friend of mine today who's a Conservative Party member. And I said, what did he think about it? And he said if there was a general election tomorrow, he would be voting Labour. And he's a Conservative member. So the Conservative Party will want to postpone the election as long as they can. But I think there's so much at stake here. The challenges that the public face, ordinary people face in being able to pay their energy bills, pay their mortgages are so severe that if the markets continue to be as volatile as they have been, there may be no choice but for the government to go to the people.
So, I mean, Nigel, Liz Truss may have done what she should have done, but the Conservative Party might not actually do what is entirely in the public interest. I mean, could the people actually take a strong stand here and say, enough is enough, we want an election?
Well, I think that they're already doing that. And certainly, I mean, within minutes of Liz Truss resigning, that the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, came out and said, what we need is an election now. And certainly, I agree with that. It's absolutely what we need. But I mean, the Conservative Party, if they can avoid it, they just won't do it. There's all sorts of problems there. I think that their own membership will be furious because they are now rowed out of even their vote on the next leader of the party. What will happen is that MPs will change the rules next week. And as a result of that, they will be the ones who will decide who is Britain's next prime minister. So you've got 300 odd people making a decision that should really be taken by an entire nation.
Right. And let me move on to Roger to talk about, I guess, the next big step this government has have to take and define who's really waiting in the wings and who's most qualified to take this job now.
Well, we don't know exactly how they're going to make the decision. A week is a very short time in politics, and an even shorter time if you've got to elect a new Conservative leader. But I would expect that Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt would be candidates. Ben Wallace name has been mentioned, and possibly Jeremy Hunt. But let's just wonder how many prime ministers we're going to see and who really does want the job. I mean, the late Queen saw how many was it? 15 prime ministers in her 70-year reign. We may be about to see as many prime ministers as the late Queen saw during her 70-year reign in the next seven years. I hope it's not the next 7 months. So I think whoever does take the job is going to be left with the legacy of the Truss and the Johnson governments, which is no public confidence, no record for economic no reputation for economic competence, and confidence in their credibility in tatters. And that's going to be a very difficult legacy to work with, whoever takes the job.
Okay. Let me ask Nigel about that. I mean, we're hearing from here a lot of talk about Rishi Sunak taking over, but I mean, he lost to a now loser in this space. Would that be good for the Conservative Party?
Well, no, probably not. It would certainly be very controversial that on the basis that Conservative members had the chance to vote between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, and they chose Liz Truss, to have that overturned would cause a real problem within the party. However, I agree with Roger. I think that the four names in the frame are Jeremy Hunt, the current finance minister, Penny Mordaunt, the leader of the House of Commons, who is responsible for putting parliamentary business through on behalf of the government, Rishi Sunak, obviously, and Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary. Now, of course, but if there's going to be a proper leadership election, anybody else could come out of the woodwork. So we could see a slate of a dozen people, for instance, in the early stages. The ideal for the Conservative Party would be to find just one candidate who is a unity candidate, which can hold the party together. Unfortunately, what the Conservative Party is nowadays is not so much a united political party, but a sort of loose alliance of warring tribes. And it's hard to see just one candidate coming forward to fulfill that.
Peter, let me come back to you. Well, hopefully your line has been redirected clearly. I want to bring up Jeremy Hunt specifically because he's been mentioned as a front runner possibly in taking over the prime ministership. But many say he was kind of, since he did take over very recently, he's kind of been in control anyway over Liz Truss because the economy is everything. That budget failed miserably. It was pretty much Truss's undoing. And now he's being left to sort it out. Would it make sense for him to take the reins?
No, because as Roger was saying, it's a total factional bun fight here. Jeremy Hunt will probably stay to steady the ship. And frankly, if he goes from the chancellorship, that would be a really bad idea at this stage. So I think what will happen is the 1922 committee will say there must be a minimum vote for a selection of candidates, maybe 100. So that will cut out the mass mob of wannabes. They want to get this over as quickly as possible, don't forget. And really what's happening now is that Sunak is being lobbied to see whether he wants this job, of your former question. If it's not him, it's probably going to be Penny Mordaunt. You've got to have a Brexiter number one.
I gotta take this up then with you. What is a Brexiter now? I mean, Brexit's finished. It was voted for. It apparently has to be done. So what difference does it make if someone supported Brexit or not? It's over.
It's very important to realize that there's two sides of one coin here. One side are the tax cuts, which have been demolished and destroyed after the mini budget. The right wing of the Tory party have another side of it, deregulation. They want to set in stone deregulation of employment, consumer and product regulation to go for growth. They haven't managed to do it with tax, but the idea that Brexit is done is not correct. Far from it. It has been hushed up. A murder in Britain about Brexit. Neither the Labour Party nor the Conservative Party really want to talk about it. Very, very disgraceful.
Okay. Roger, I didn't see you shake your head or nod your head in this case, but quickly, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, Peter's talking about momentum, and we'll need to see whether that momentum is going to take the Conservative Party slowly uphill or rapidly downhill. I think the Conservative Parliamentary Party is very good at stabbing its own leaders in the back. We saw that with Johnson, we saw it with Theresa May, we've seen it with David Cameron, now we've seen it with Liz Truss. But they're also able to unite around a single candidate if they think their own jobs depend on it, and if they have the desire, which they do, to stay in power. The problem is, as Nigel was saying, who could that unitarian candidate be? Because it's not just a question of the tribalism which is there. The problem is Brexit. It's not, obviously the referendum took place many years ago, but the Conservatives are yet to set out a vision for what a post-Brexit Britain looks like. And the problem is that there are different views about what that vision is. One view says, look, let's turn our backs on international trade. Let's try and build the economy domestically. One Conservative MP was standing up this morning and saying, not just he doesn't like migration from Europe, he doesn't like migration from anywhere. That's what the Suella Braverman thing was about, keeping migration out. Or do you open up to trade and to migration and liberalize and have a kind of supercharged market economy? And those two visions are completely incompatible. And therefore, it's really difficult to see, ironically, because of Brexit, what a kind of united, what a vision is that a Conservative Party can unite around in post-Brexit Britain. It doesn't
Okay.
exist. They can't find it. They can't communicate it. And therefore, I think they have a very serious problem to unite around any individual, whoever that individual may be.
You know, Nigel, as a political analyst yourself, and listening to Roger talk about, the backstabbing in the Conservative Party, it's interesting to see this from abroad, because if you look, we, of course, have to talk about U.S. politics as well, and we're watching a Republican or Conservative Party over there, do anything to protect their leader. They won't turn their backs on anyone, and we see what happens when someone does. What is it about the UK that I don't know, do they think it's sometimes healthy to undermine their own leaders? Does that prove their objective?
Well, I appreciate in recent years it's become to sort of look like internationally our national sport to go and get rid of our leaders. No, I don't think it is that. I think that the situation was that we've had two pretty appalling prime ministers. So Boris Johnson had to go when he lost the confidence of his own MPs after a series of scandals. In Liz Truss's case, it was simply that she wasn't up to the job, that it was quite clear when she announced her financial package that it just wasn't going to work. It's the way the markets behaved. So I think that it's more a combination of unfortunate events, and one rather hopes that the next leader of the Conservative Party, who will be elected next week, is going to do a lot better job than the previous two. No guarantee of that. But the important thing is that this time, I think that the idea that Brexit will play a big part, it will certainly play a part, but not a huge part. The issue now is economic competence.
Right.
And so that's why I think Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt are probably the favourites for that.
Okay. I mean, that is, there are such serious problems in the UK right now. So how much does all of this political kind of instability actually compromise getting the most important work done, like tackling inflation and settling up the economy? Nigel, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, what at least has happened so far is that Jeremy Hunt, as the incoming finance minister, he has been able to rip up the Liz Truss's economic package that caused such a disaster. So that has sort of stabilised the markets for the time being. Now, the question comes is he's due to make the next financial statement on October the 31st, which is not very far away. The important thing to see is what he actually puts into that, and then everything will depend on what the market reaction is to it.
Okay. Roger, I want to give you some final thoughts here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need to wait for the statement on the 31st of October, as Nigel has said. We need to see the pound stabilising. We need to see what the forecasts are for growth and for debt. We need to see a reduction in market volatility and things settle down. And of course, there's no guarantee that there won't be another major external shock. And the winter fuel crisis is on us. So again, I think it comes back to the confidence of the markets and the confidence of the public. Politics is not bungee jumping. We love to march our leaders up to the top of the hill and then throw them off there, push them off the edge and see them fall all the way back down again. But that's not what people want going on in their life. They don't. High inflation is very damaging to people, damaging to people's lives who are struggling, particularly vulnerable marginal groups. It's very damaging to business. And I think we need to really get serious here and understand that this isn't just about politics. This is really about people's lives. There's a very tough legacy here and very tough challenges ahead. And whoever is in charge needs to calm things down and get things right. And I think it'll be difficult to do that now. I think that in the end, for the reasons that Liz Truss has gone, the Conservative government may need to say, in the interest of Britain, in the interest of stabilising the markets, we are going to call an early general election, even though they will politically want to resist that as much as they can. They may be persuaded in the end that that is the only reasonable thing for them to do.
Overall, yes or no? Are you at least slightly optimistic?
I think it's a very worrying time for the British public. I think Liz Truss has made the right decision. I think there are still decisions for the Conservative Party to make, and I don't think it's just about selecting a new leader. I think it's about whether to allow for an early general election. If they can't unite and stabilise things, then that's what they must do.
Roger Casale, Peter Wilding, and Nigel Nelson, I'd like to thank all three of you so much for being with us on this edition of The Newsmakers. Our viewers, of course, for tuning in as well. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.